Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here today to the Older Vermonters Caucus. It's great to have representatives or our congressional delegation here today to talk about their priorities around older Vermonters and older Americans. Before we get started, though, I don't know if anyone has any announcements they'd like to make. Raise your hand or just start talking, I guess, and otherwise we'll get started. All right. Pamela
Smith.
All right. Well, I don't see anybody. So, all right. Oh, I got some people coming in the. Okay. So welcome. So we'll get started. I guess Beth Stern, would you like to start for Senator Sanders' office?
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. And yeah, I'm Beth Stern. I'm an outreach representative for Senator Sanders. I cover, besides seniors, I cover healthcare, disabilities, and economic justice issues. And outreach representatives are basically the eyes and ears for the senator here in Vermont. We make sure we know what's going on in the issue areas so that we can let him know, and vice versa, let people know what he's doing in DC on those issue areas. So, as you know, the senator, as you may know, the senator in the past has requested a doubling of Older Americans Act funding. He's a strong supporter of the Older Americans Act programs. We are now currently in the process of developing our asks for next year, so that nothing's finalized yet, but he's going to continue to be a strong supporter of the Older Americans Act law and the programs. As you might know, the law is authorized through 2024. And as the time gets closer to look at reauthorization of the Older Americans Act, our office will be involved in that as well. He also remains very engaged with other issues related to aging, includes healthcare access. He held a hearing last month on expanding community health centers. Other workforce issues, he held a hearing on February 16th on medical workforce challenges. He and the HELP ranking Republican member, Senator Cassidy, have put out a request for information to medical providers on how the workforce shortage is affecting them. If anybody wants that, let me know and I can forward it. Using the input they receive, the senators hope to identify bipartisan solutions that can be included in future legislation. He's also very concerned about prescription drug costs. The Inflation Reduction Act from last year reduced the cost of insulin for people on Medicare to a maximum of $35 a month. And kind of as we speak, pharmaceutical companies are voluntarily reducing the cost of insulin because I think they see the writing on the wall that it could end up in legislation. And there's also a bill that would extend the limits to people of all ages. He is working hard on increasing Social Security benefits and also making sure that Social Security remains solvent. He believes that every older person should be able to retire with dignity and that people with disabilities should be able to live with the security they need. To that vein, he's introduced legislation called the Social Security Expansion Act that would expand Social Security benefits by $2,400 a year and also ensure that it's fully funded for the next 75 years. To pay for that, the bill proposes lifting the cap on the income limit for people paying into Social Security so that high-income Americans pay their fair share. He's also very concerned about Medicare. He understands that there's many issues around Medicare. The committee that he's chair of, the HELP committee, doesn't actually regulate Medicare. That is under the Finance Committee. So there's not a direct correlation with his committee. But he also believes that we should be moving to a single payer, what he calls Medicare for All system. And he plans to reintroduce that this Congress. There is a low likelihood of that passing, and he understands that. But part of what he has been doing is pushing issue areas that he's really concerned about in ways that might not necessarily get changed through legislation, but might get changed through other means, such as the prescription drugs. He's also very concerned about the Medicare Advantage plans that are, as you know, ubiquitous these days. In his bill on Medicare for All, It would include language explicitly prohibiting private companies from selling these benefits. He's also talked about Medicare Advantage with the CMS administrator. He believes that corporate greed has no place in healthcare and made that very clear. And on a staff level, we've had meeting with Vermont and national stakeholders on issues related to privatizing Medicare and the any of the Medicare Advantage issues. So I'll just close by saying that he's only been the chair of HELP since the first week of February. And so we are still staffing up in the HELP committee space. So HELP is health, education, labor, and pensions. So the primary focus for this group would be the health part of that. We have multiple new staff members. They all have different things that they focus on. And so I'm still getting to know them. And if people have any questions, I can certainly find out who the best contact would be. So I'm here to listen and answer any questions that you may have, but I'll turn it back to Dan. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, for being here today and that update. I think next is we'll do questions at the end if someone has questions or comments they want to bring up. But I think, James, are you up next for Senator Welch?
Yeah, you bet. I can provide some. Yeah, sure. Happy to be here. Some brief updates I can provide, but first, so my name is James McNerney, and I cover seniors issues on the outreach side here for Senator Welch in his Vermont office. I'm relatively new to the office and new to this role, so excited to connect with all of you and get to learn more, certainly. In terms of updates on our side, so just a few real brief updates on the healthcare front. Senator Welch is broadly supportive of the budget that the president had recently proposed and the efforts to expand access to affordable health care and also, do what it can to reduce prescription drug prices. He did also sign on to here recently to a letter with Senators Wyden and Tester, among others, to ask the president to basically do what we can to publicize the impact of the Inflation Reduction Act on those Medicare Part B inflation rebates. Very supportive of anything we can do, and understand certainly that the high cost of everything, especially on prescription drug prices, is reaching kind of a breaking point here. So in terms of just kind of general areas of focus for our office, of course, Senator Welch was appointed to the Agriculture Committee. And so we're currently working on, kind of prioritizing and getting organized for Farm Bill reauthorization. The area that I cover looks specifically at that Title IV hunger and nutrition piece. So we were leaning on a kind of a broad coalition of various Vermont stakeholders and organizations to look at what we can do to really shore up our most vulnerable communities here insofar as hunger and food insecurity is related, and we've got a great set of policy proposals from the coalition here in Vermont that will really help guide and kind of shape our conversations insofar as that hunger and nutrition piece of the Farm Bill reauthorization, which will happen this year, is concerned. So just some real brief and kind of general updates on my side, but I'm happy to take any questions as well. So.
All right, thank you so much. We have Morgan Nichols from Congresswoman Balint's office next, who's in the room here and at the State House. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Representative Noyes. Hi, everyone. My name is, can everyone hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Morgan Nichols, and I'm a constituent services representative and community liaison for Congresswoman Balint. So I wear two hats, and on the constituent services side, there we go. On the constituent services side, I do work related to Social Security and food security, so often have interfaced with older Vermonters as it relates to those issues, and often their caregivers as well. So if anyone needs any support in those areas, I am more than happy to support you and your constituents. So, and then on the community liaison side, just as Beth shared, we are the eyes and ears of our offices and work on economic development, rural development, and also support issues related to paid family and medical leave, food security, and older Vermonters are an additional part of my buckets. We have a pretty small staff, so we're all carrying quite a few pieces, but we're all working intersectionally, which has worked out really, really well for our team. So as you know, Congresswoman Valent draws on our experience in the state legislature and brings those issues to the forefront in her work in Congress. She's doing everything she can to protect the programs most important to older Vermonters, such as Social Security, Medicare, VA benefits, SNAP benefits. As it relates to Social Security, we know that over 65 million Americans rely on and have earned their Social Security benefits, with 2/3 of Vermonters middle age or older, and it is imperative that we expand the infrastructure and funding to fully support all Vermonters in retirement. She co-sponsored the Social Security Fairness Act, HR 282, which is a bipartisan bill that would repeal provisions that reduce Social Security benefits for individuals who receive other government benefits. Specifically, the bill eliminates the government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision. As more legislation is introduced, she will be supportive of legislation that works to expand and improve Social Security and Medicare benefits. Additionally, she wants to continue to fight against the Republican Party that wants to hold hostage programs such as Social Security and Medicare over the debt ceiling fight. Raising the debt ceiling is a routine procedure that has regularly occurred under Democratic and Republican presidents, and she is committed to working with colleagues on the budget committee to ensure that the government stays open. As it relates to caregiving, Representative Ballant recognizes the importance of caregivers and supporting the network and infrastructure that supports our most vulnerable community, including our older Vermonters. She is a co-sponsor of the Better Care, Better Jobs Act, HR 547, which would strengthen and expand access to Medicaid home and community-based services, HCBS, which would also support stronger benefits for the direct care workforce. As it relates to Medicare, the Congresswoman is supportive of expanding benefits under Medicare and looks forward to building on the progress made through the Inflation Reduction Act. This bill requires that HHS to negotiate prices for some top-selling drugs covered in Medicare and caps out-of-pocket drug spending for beneficiaries in Medicare Part D at $2,000 annually, among other provisions. And then finally, as I shared before, our caseworkers and our liaisons between the federal agencies, our office and our staff are available for personal and constituent issues that may arise from benefits through Social Security, IRS, and Medicare. Please feel free to contact our office. And we are available as a resource on questions related to federal agencies and can be a liaison between the state and our federal offices. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. Thank you, Morgan. Thank you for all of our guests being here today. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask or any comments? Oh, looks like we have Pamela. Please go ahead.
Hi. I really appreciate everybody coming to this from our different legislators. So I'm on the committee as somebody with lived experience. I have younger onset Alzheimer's. I was diagnosed at age 53. So I'm wondering if Beth Stern, specifically from Sanders' office, could speak to if she knows if there's any room to move on allowing Leqembi or lecanemab to be available. I'm still in the mild stage, and my neurologist has said if it were available and in my case affordable through Medicare, I might be a candidate.
Yeah, thanks, Pamela. I don't know the answer to that question. Was it recently approved by the FDA or not? I'm not 100% sure.
Yes, it has the sort of fast track approval from the FDA, and it's moving on to getting full FDA approval. I recently heard, though I haven't been able to verify that the VA is going to make it available to veterans, but it's it's cost prohibitive for most of us. And as they're talking about capping the cost of other drugs, could this be one that's negotiated with the price going down each year or something, so that I am a middle-class American. There's very, very little that I qualify for assistance. I desperately need case management. I don't have a means of getting it. I pay for all my very limited services because I have to, I can't think of the word, sorry. I have to be mindful of my expenses over time. I don't qualify to even tap my retirement for another 3 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, having that medication really might prolong the
Sure.
high quality of my life.
I know that the people on the health team are definitely following this and very aware of it. So I'm taking notes right now. I'll make sure that I kind of re-up this with people and just see if they have any new information. I can get back to you with that. But I know it's something we're definitely following, and as things develop, what can make that information known. But thank you. I really appreciate you bringing it up. So I've got notes on it now. So thanks.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Representative Anthony, see you have a question. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Danny. I wanted to go back to food security and an observation for both Beth and the representative from Senator Welch's office. In another context, namely the debate over universal school meals, it was revealed to me that the Vermont Department of Agriculture did not have anything to throw into the pot because the federal Department of Agriculture makes no distinction or set aside for local production in its farm aid. And I guess I just wanted to sound the bell that increasingly the policy is moving towards decentralization of food production with an emphasis on local growers and local procurement. And I'm sort of astonished that at the federal level, there is apparently no recognition of this as a worthy and growing, if you will, part of the food supply for the country. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll just say that I'll flag that for our ag staffers, but I'll let James speak more knowledgeably about it.
Yeah, and same. I'll make sure to flag that for our legislative team. Just one thing that we can be aware of as we start to really ramp up our conversations on the Ag Committee around how Farm Bill reauthorization will play out and what our priorities are. I can speak to, we just had a great roundtable in Morrisville last Friday, really focused on meeting hunger and nutrition needs, and the universal school meal programs was something that came up, something that we're going to start looking at here pretty intently. Just in the way that provides so much trickle down relief for all other organizations that are concerned with food security. I mean, the pressure that it takes off of local food banks, off of Meals on Wheels, off of just a bunch of different organizations, I think was really remarkable and something that the senator was certainly very interested to hear about. So that's something that we're definitely going to be paying very close attention to here, and something that will really guide and shape our conversations. But I appreciate you flagging that for me so that I can make sure that our legislative staffers in DC are aware of that, and we can factor that into our deliberations.
Just an observation. We in the legislature purposely inserted an obligation for AOE to give some precedence in the acquisition for local producers. But what I was astonished, as I say, to learn was there was no, if you will, a repetition of that recognition or preference at the federal level in the money that flows to Vermont and to its Department of Agriculture.
Anything you want to add? Okay.
I appreciate you lifting that up, Representative Anthony, and I'll also share that with our team. Thank you.
I mean, I
Great.
think, as you know, probably things can move faster sometimes at the state level than the federal level, but yeah, good, really good flag.
Thanks. Natalie? Thanks.
Hi, thank you so much. Natalie Glenn, I'm here representing Cathedral Square today. And I was just curious if anyone had any additional updates on the Better Care, Better Jobs Act. I heard your updates, Morgan, and we really appreciate everyone from our federal delegation co-sponsoring this piece of legislation, but wondering if there's any chance that there'll be any movement on it this session and any other updates anyone might have.
You know, at this point, we know that I don't have an update as to where that will go, but I will flag that for our team to see if I can get an update to you, Natalie. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Next up, we have Daryl and Barbara.
Oh, God, it's-
Hi, thanks. So yeah, we're Daryl, Rudy, Barbara Edelman. We live in St. Johnsbury. Daryl has Alzheimer's. He's in the early stage and I'm his care partner. Just wanted to say hi, Beth, Morgan, and James. So glad that you're here today and appreciate hearing from you and getting the updates. Wanted to let you know that Daryl and I and Pamela are all going to be going to DC next week, and we'll be there Tuesday meeting with staff in the DC offices and hoping to see your bosses there. And we're going to be making some masks, all of which kind of basically amount to asking for equitable access to treatment and continued appropriations to the NIH for research into treatment and cures. So thanks for whatever you can do to support our cause. And again, appreciate your taking the time to be here. Did you want to say anything?
No, Barb said it well.
All right.
All right. Thank you. Joanne.
Hi, thank you very much. Just have a couple of questions and maybe just ask if people are thinking about certain things. The equitable issue came up just recently now. And I'm wondering, you know, with the rising number of older Vermonters that are growing over the next few years, I think projected out to be like by 30%, and the diminishment of the population of younger people, they're diminishing over the next few years by about 20%. When we're looking forward on budgets, is there equitable distribution of funds allocated to programs that address the actual pro-rata distribution that is dependent on the population? That's my first question. My second question is, back a few months ago, went to a conversation in Brattleboro for a public discussion on dementia, Alzheimer's, and things like that. Wonderful presentations. And some of the questions that were asked by the caregivers, how can they access resources? Most of these caregivers are themselves well into the retirement years. They can't go get another job because now their full-time job is caring for a partner. And the cost of accessing support, which would be like, daycare and, in-home care, is so exorbitantly expensive that within a month or two, they will really exhaust their entire life savings. How do we address that issue and how do we help these people? That's all.
You ask not easy questions, Joanne.
I don't mean to ask easy questions, but they're important questions.
No, they are very important questions. I'll do my best. on this and really
I don't mean
appreciate
to
it.
put,
No, no,
I don't put you on the spot.
no, it's fine. They're really good questions. But I don't know that I have really good answers to them, first of all. So as
That's
far as
okay.
the first one about prorating the budget, I think the answer is no, it's not prorated. And part of that is, you talked about Vermont's aging population, but that's not the case in every state. And so, there are many states, I think, where the younger population is potentially growing faster. So I think when we look at a budget on a national level, it's not easy to say, well, for Vermont, we have to do it this way. I mean, there are things like small state minimums that Vermont gets. And I think that helps in a lot of programs, including the Older Americans Act. Without that small state minimum, Vermont would get significantly less money for the numbers of Vermonters, So I think that is kind of the best bet on the programs for older people as far as funding, is to make sure that we keep that small state minimum so that Vermont doesn't get penalized for having a really small population. So that's what I'd say about that. How can caregivers access resources? I guess I'm not sure how to answer that on a kind of federal level. I know you're very aware of all the ways that people can get support to find out what they're eligible for. And I guess that would be what I would suggest people do. So I guess I'm not 100% sure how to answer that intelligently on a federal level, but really glad if James or Morgan have any thoughts.
Thanks, Beth.
Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of accessing those resources, I mean, both of these things are helpful things that I can pass over to our support staff and our legislative staff in DC to look into, especially, when it comes to finding and navigating some of those resources. They may or may not be out there. I just don't have the information in front of me to be able to really communicate, what a good game plan would be for someone in that situation. And same thing along with the concern around the equitable structuring or distribution of the budget. My fear here is that given the political climate in DC, we're going to have a hard time getting a budget passed any which way as it is. And I think that that coming in with an approach that would complicate that or inspire pushback is not something that at this point I think there's a ton of political will in DC to do. But I think that you're right on the money in terms of what we're seeing with our population here in Vermont. I mean, certainly it's not that way everywhere, but we've got a number of states that are coming up on kind of this demographic crunch right here, and I think it's definitely something that is worth flagging and something that we can think about as we think about how we're going to approach some of those conversations. So I'll make sure to pass both of those along to our staff to look into them for different reasons, and certainly happy to provide updates or follow up outside of this meeting on that front.
Well, thank you very much. And to all of you out there who are answering these questions, I know they're not easy. Otherwise, they'd already have answers, right? But just to think about planning for the future, so that maybe the federal government could build in some resources for people to access. We do send people, we have caregiver respite grants. We have a grant with the Public Health AmeriCorps to get in-home respite volunteers to give people who are taking care of family members some respite. But that's like a thumb in the dike. I think we need a big federal policy that says, you know what, you live in the United States. When you get old, it's not the end of your life. I know personally our case managers are working with people who are 80 or 85 years old, get moved out of their apartment because the project gets sold or whatever, and they're on a 5-year waiting list to get into an apartment. They're never going to live long enough to get into an apartment.
Yeah. Housing is certainly a major issue as well. And I would just say, to hold not hold them, but as we're looking at reauthorizing the Older Americans Act, these are things that I think should be brought up, because it definitely, things have changed a lot in the last few years. And so how do you make that act reflect the actual needs now and going forward? So I think that will be really important to be involved in.
Well, thank you. And that's all I'm asking. I don't expect a solution today. Just let's think about it. And you've answered me really, really intelligently and nicely. Thanks, guys.
Hi, Joanne. I would just add to that. I know all of our offices, feel the same. Any opportunity to continue to have these broader conversations around the challenges that our constituencies are facing to get, your boots on the ground experience to be able to take those stories back, I think is really important. And I appreciate what Beth said earlier about how everyone has such expertise in navigating these systems. And we know that we're not for a lack of resources in this state, but sometimes it's a matter of how do we get people across the bridge to those resources. And I know that our constituent services teams and all of our offices are really eager to support our constituents as they turn over those stones. So as always, please feel free to reach out. And if I, in this new role, might not know a thing, I know that our senators' offices have been very helpful as well to help us understand the landscape. So thank you for all that you're doing.
Well, thanks, Becca. That helps too. You guys are doing a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, and at a local level, the Human Services Committee here at the state level, we always need your support to the Appropriations Committee for the increases in funding that we recommended in the budget for the home and community-based providers. So Representative Wood was in appropriations yesterday and really highlighted a lot of the issues, underfunding issues that have happened over the years. And so hopefully we'll see some changes there at the more state level. So.
Great.
Yeah, and it's really, coming from my background in nonprofits with the area agencies, I know how underfunded at the federal level all of these programs have been for years and years and years. And, the state has picked up some of that, but not all of it, and nor should they have to pick up all of it. So, it's challenging to kind of get these programs where they need to be, but I know that Senator Sanders and the rest of the congressional delegation are all really committed to this.
Great, thank you. Representative Anthony.
Just to emphasize, I guess, or echo what Beth just said, the short answer to what do you do when you can no longer care for your loved one and you're running your savings down to nothing. Some ideologues will say, well, that's why we created Medicare. The difficulty, of course, is that Medicare reimbursement is in the basement, and the institutions that rely on Medicare are slowly going bankrupt. And so there is a train wreck, and it does surround what role Medicaid, is supposed to fulfill in this. And I think that's really a heavy lift for sure, but I would think that there's common ground because every state in the union has got a growing average age. Yes, they may have an injection of new kids, but everybody gets old. Thanks.
Thank you. Beth, I have a quick question. In talking about increasing the Older Americans Act, and then also the small state minimum.
Dan, I lost you for a minute.
Yeah.
Can anybody repeat what Dan said? No. I think we all lost you.
Dan, no, he's muted. You just look at the icon.
Dan, unmute yourself.
He looks frozen to me.
Yeah, he's not muted in room 270. I wish he'd said more of the question because I don't know what he was asking.
He just hopped off. Maybe he's going to hop on again.
Yeah.
He's probably trying to fix it. Yeah.
Does Montpelier have broadband?
Yeah, there were big internet issues in Montpelier yesterday.
Uh-huh.
And the State House actually lost power for a bit too.
Yeah, I went on generator.
But internet was out a lot in a lot of parts of Montpelier yesterday. I actually don't even know if it's back on. I didn't try to go.
Well, does anybody else have questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, this is Glenn McCram with the Burlington Aging Council, and maybe we could just follow up with the housing issue and whether there is any work going on in federal housing policy that addresses or may contribute to the issue of the really varied housing needs of aging populations. So we know it's not just build more houses, it's building specific types of housing for our aging population. And since housing is obviously a very key Vermont issue, I'm just curious as to what types of work might be going on at the federal level that would deal with housing and aging.
Yeah, thanks. So, I don't want to pass it off to another staff member, but we do have another staff member who focuses on housing issues, and I can certainly circle back with him. But I think that I don't know that there's a lot of federal housing legislation. There's not like a committee of housing at the federal level, and that is, we've looked at that and we said, boy, there's no place where housing really fits neatly in like the HELP committee, for example, or any of the other committees that we know of. So a lot of the housing legislation is more local. It doesn't mean to say we can't do some things at the federal level to support programs that are housing related and elder related. And our office is certainly looking at some of that, somewhat through some of the earmark, the CDS process that is happening now. As soon as I get off this call, I'm going to be working with our health team staff to look at some of the applications that Senator Sanders got. I believe that Senator Welch's deadline is maybe later this week. Ours was last week, and I know that Congresswoman Balance is, I think, even later. So anyway, we're looking at all of those to see, are there ways that we can make a difference in Vermont around housing and senior supports.
Yeah, and yeah, just to touch on that. So yeah, much of the work at the federal level that we've seen really result in some good benefits has come through those CDS requests, the congressionally directed spending requests. In fact, when we were doing our hunger and nutrition roundtable in Morrisville, we also paid a visit to some housing projects that they're working on there. And so I know that that's one way that we really try and connect, the housing needs at the more local level with, federal funding opportunities. And then just to kind of circle back to what I said in the beginning, another aspect of the proposed budget that President Biden submitted that, of course, Senator Welch is incredibly supportive of are the efforts within that budget to try and tackle some of these housing related issues. And, I know there's a big piece in there designed to increase funding and tax incentives for low income housing. And that may not be directed specifically towards older folks who have a high need for it, but there's a high need for it kind of across the spectrum at this point. And so again, broadly supportive of whatever we can do at the federal level. Certainly supportive of these budget proposals that would kind of pump some more focused money in towards creating some housing that's available to low-income Vermonters, low-income people around the country, but nothing off the top of my head that I can think of that in terms of legislation that's up and coming, and kind of like Beth said, it's really hard to identify the process by which we could can address some of these other than some of the ones that I've just listed. But again, same sort of thing. We've got a staffer here in our Vermont office, as well as a legislative team in DC with some folks on it that specifically focus on housing. So I've made some notes here, and I'm happy to pass that along to figure out if there's anything else that I'm missing.
And there is the Housing and Urban Development whole organization too, which I just totally forgot about. But so they may have some things going on that we can check out as well.
Great, thank you.
Hello. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. So I just wanted to highlight a couple things for folks to listen to. So for me, a priority is equity for people with Alzheimer's who are younger than 60 and 65. I don't know if you know this, but none of the Alzheimer's Association statistics include us. We are not counted in any way. Hopefully a statewide coordinator will get approved in Vermont, and at least Vermont will count us. But at this point, we are uncounted. And my suspicion as to why we therefore can't access some basic services is because nobody realizes that there are thousands and thousands of us across the country and hundreds of us in the state. So I am just making a plea, I guess, that when the caucus, I appreciate, think of older Vermonters as people in their 50s and looking ahead. But that isn't the case with a lot of some programs. And I hear one of the barriers is that the federal kind of system for older adults and services doesn't include us, and that's one of the barriers. So I guess I'm making a plea to, when the senators and representatives are thinking about legislation to assist older Vermonters, that they include people like me who have lost their careers prematurely from this condition, who are going to deteriorate more quickly than traditional age Alzheimer's, who can't even access their own retirement plans because there's this 59.5-year thing. So that's a big plea of mine, is to start looking at the legislation and making sure that things are available to younger folks with progressive dementia conditions. The other thing is, I think Vermont particularly does, nothing is no needs are all met. But for people who are in the middle class, we're basically need to go into poverty to access some things. And I think it's not cost effective to the state to force middle-class Americans who can contribute some into complete poverty in order to access some services. I just don't think it's a good, I don't think it's cost effective. I think it's an unwise approach. I need case management. I can't buy case management. I don't qualify for it because I'm too young. It's a basic thing. I can pay for some of my services. Right now I pay for everything, but to force us into poverty, to say, well, spend down your money, get rid of it so you can qualify for Medicaid. I will never qualify for Medicaid. My husband is only 48 years old and he has to work. He has child support. He has children to support. It's just not, it really sticks a lot of us in a place where we're forced to, I don't get all the services that I should right now because I've got to, parse it out. So I'm hoping that there's a look at how do we help middle income families stay somewhat in the middle income range and not force them into poverty, as well as looking at how can we support people who are younger than 65. And Medicare covers squat. If people are thinking, oh, Medicare covers home-based services, that's how you're going to get help. No, they don't. So if Medicare covers case management, no, it doesn't. So I think people think Medicare covers a lot more than it does, and that's the solution, and it's just not. So
Thank you,
just
Pamela.
how people think of those things as they're.
Yeah, absolutely. We know there are many holes in the system right now, and that's a problem.
The thing is, I grew up extremely low income. no insurance, food stamps. And I worked hard my whole life, 60, 80 hours a week to climb out of poverty and into middle income. And to think that the system is really forcing me back when I spent, I started working at 10 to support my family. And to feel forced back into poverty after everything I've done, it's very hard.
It's really interesting that in the 30+ years that I've worked in the system, the Medicaid resource limits haven't changed for community Medicaid. So,
my daughter finally worked herself out of Medicaid. We've worked so hard to get to the middle class. And now I feel like that we're being forced back into poverty because I got Alzheimer's when I was 50 years old. Okay, I'm done. Sorry.
And I don't see Dan coming back on. Steve, I think I see. Joanne, your hand is still raised. I don't know if you meant to keep it on.
Oh, no, I don't know how to put it down. I'm on my phone.
Okay.
We don't have any power. I'm charging my phone, so I'm in the car. Here we go. I can do it.
You had a call. You had a question?
And more of a comment. Every time I come to these meetings, I'm just reduced to, to tears when I hear all the stories, especially you folks who are in the agencies working. I'm a volunteer lobbyist. I'm at the other end of the scale. I'm totally privileged as an old white fart. I worked for a union for 23 years. All my retiree health care is covered by the union as a negotiated benefit. And when I hear these stories, I feel a sense of frustration. And now we have a Republican House, and a lot of the programs that people are talking about are going to be very difficult to get passed. But I keep coming back to why Medicare disadvantage exists. Because it's just not that it's a bad program, it's that it actually harms our citizens. And I'm asking the wrong people. I mean, we all know that if there were any way to get rid of that program entirely, I think the benefits, would be excellent. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, so I apologize for
no
that.
problem.
I do want to mention one other thing, and I talked with Representative Noyes and Mary Hayden last week. Folks show up to these meetings from the agencies, and that's wonderful because you're also cross-fertilizing and talking to each other. Representative Anthony and the chair of the task force here, Representative Noyes, are the only legislators who have shown up. We are not getting legislators at these meetings, and now the organizers can talk. All of you, besides being professionals, are citizens of Vermont with representatives. You're all constituents. And I urge you to reach out to the people that you have voted for or not, and urge them to come periodically to the meetings of this caucus. There's another caucus meeting right now, and they're getting 5 to 8 legislators whenever they meet. At Cove, we fashioned a quick program yesterday. Our co-president's going to write to the board and say, start talking to your legislators about showing up. But having legislators at these meetings is key to why the caucus exists. And I urge you to think about this, picking up that phone this weekend and saying to your legislator, we would appreciate you showing up from time to time. End of mini rant.
Yeah, thanks. I'm gonna have to scoot off. I have another meeting coming right up, but I just wanted to thank you, Steve, for those comments and just say, why do things exist at the federal level? I think one of the things you can look at is corporate greed and lobbyists, and look at how many lobbyists there are around things like Medicare Advantage and how that influences politicians, not our politicians in Vermont. I will present company all excluded, but they make money, and they make money for entities that then talk to their legislators and get them to do things that are not so good for the people. So, I mean, and that goes for pharmaceutical companies, it goes for insurance companies in Senator Sanders' opinion. All of that is kind of driven by corporate greed. So, yeah, I know it's a hard one. It doesn't look like we got Dan back, but I'm just going to, I'm not really in charge of this meeting, but that's okay. I'm just going to thank all of you for being here and asking the questions. People, I think, know how to reach me, but if not, I can put my information in the chat. And it's just really important, I think, for all of us to hear from all of you, so that we know what's going on and we can get that back to our bosses, because they really need to hear this. So I know it sounds like we all took notes, and we'll make sure that we talk to the right people. But we're very reachable, and love to do things like this. It's our job. So thank you.
Yeah,
thanks for spontaneously stepping in, Beth, and taking the lead.
Yeah, I'm no longer like in charge in my job, but I still remember how to do some of that.
Very good.
All right, great.
Yeah, and I'll echo that. I just want to say thanks. I do have to hop off to here for another meeting at 1, but I want to thank everyone for all of the questions, for the participation. Certainly, I mean, specifically for me, as someone who's new to the role and new to the issue area, this is very, very helpful. For me, just to kind of start learning the ropes and start hearing about the updates and what's important to you all, so that I can make sure we get it to our legislative staff in DC. But super appreciate both the questions and the comments and observations, things to flag for us. Make sure that we'll get this. And then same thing, I'll post my contact info in the chat as well. Please don't hesitate to reach out for any reason. Stay in touch.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all very much.